Hello Year 9, hope you're all well. It's Mr. Arif again. I'll be taking you through one of the most famous poems in the English language, actually. Certainly one of the most famous war poems in the English language, called The Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Quite an interesting poem, and it's known for its rhythmic quality as well as its nationalist fervour. And we'll talk more about that as we go through. A couple of things you need at the start. You need a pen. You need your work booklet for the Charge of the Light Brigade. Now, as I said last time, if you can print out the work booklet, that would be ideal, so you've got it in front of you. If you can't print it off, not a problem. Just have it in front of you online, kind of use it like an online textbook. Have a notepad in front of you and make sure you're writing down all the notes in your notepad so you've got all the notes present. Before we move on to the Charge of the Light Brigade, we're going to do a little bit of a recap on Storming the Island, and that will be your Do Now task. So when you're ready, move on to the Do Now task, which will be on the next slide. Answers to each of the Do Now questions are in red. Just have a read through, make sure you've got the correct answer. Once you've got down the correct answers, then please move on to the next slide. I said in my intro that The Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson is possibly the most famous war poem in the English language. Now, to be honest, when I think of war poetry, it's the first poem that comes into my head, along with For the Fallen by Lawrence Binyon, which is the poem that they read on the 11th of November. But The Charge of the Light Brigade is the one that really sticks out. It is a celebration of war. It is a glorification of war and soldiers, and it is a nationalist poem. I'm going to talk a little bit more about nationalism today if I can. Well, what is a light brigade? Now, a light brigade in the 18th and 19th century, so that's the 1700s and the 1800s, were a section of the army that were just on horses, and they were known as the cavalry. They wouldn't have heavy armour, they would have light armour, and they would have light weapons, kind of weapons that you could carry on a horse. So they wouldn't have cannons with them, they wouldn't have large guns, they would have smaller rifles, bayonets, and sabres, which are swords. So it's the kind of light armour and light artillery that you can take with you on a horse. That's what a light brigade is. Charge, of course, is moving forward in a relentless way. So this is what we're talking about, the Charge of the Light Brigade, and the fact that it's very specifically the Charge of the Light Brigade tells us that this happened at a very specific time in history. And we're going to talk about that more in the upcoming slides. But before we talk more about the history of the Charge of the Light Brigade and what happened during the war where the Light Brigade did make their charge, I want you to have a look at the picture that's on the slide. So move on to the next slide and we'll have a look at this picture in more detail. So I want you to take your time and have a good look at the picture that is on slide 5 of the PowerPoint. Just having a look, take it all in. And I want you to list 5 adjectives that you can think of when you look at this picture. Just note them down in your notepad. 5 adjectives that you think of immediately when you look at this picture. So just have a look at that picture, the first 5 things that pop out into your head. Get them down on your paper, please. And then move straight on to the next slide. So some of the key adjectives that come to mind, and you might have different ones: cannon fire, danger, war, fight, battle, army, death, destruction, broken, flee, and enemies. Those are just some of the words that popped into my head looking at that picture. You might have others. If you've got any that are similar or the same as me, well done. You're thinking along the same lines as the genius that is Mr. Arif. If not, or you haven't got 5 adjectives, feel free to use the ones there. Just get them down. And if you've got any other ones, that's even better. Once you're happy with the adjectives that you've got, and you think you've got a feel for what the charge of the Light Brigade is about based on the picture there, move on to the next slide, please. I'd like you to open up your work booklets, either online or if you've got them printed out, have them in front of you, to the very first page and activity number 1, which says making predictions. You've got 3 questions there. I'd like to have a look at those 3 questions. Don't spend longer than 5 minutes, as it says on your sheet. Have a go at those 3 questions. When you feel comfortable that you've answered those 3 questions, and if you're not sure, just write down just a few notes. If you really can't think of anything, leave it blank. When you're ready, move on to the next slide, and you will have some answers there waiting for you. So, what do we reckon? Making predictions. Question 1. A brigade is a military formation. What kind of ideas do you think the poem will explore? I think it's quite obvious by now that the poem will explore war or a battle of some kind. So if you said war or a battle, well done you. Second question. Highlight the word charge. What does this tell you about the movements of the brigade? What other ideas do you think the poem will explore based on this word? So your answer, as you can see on the PowerPoint slide there, number 8, it tells us that the military brigade were moving relentlessly forward even in the face of attack. We'll explore that in more detail. Number 3, what is the effect of the word the? Why not a charge? So why is the poem called The Charge of the Light Brigade, not a charge of the Light Brigade? I kind of touched on this earlier, but the answer is that this is a very specific moment in history and a very specific battle that has been remembered in history. To figure out what that was, I'd like you to turn to the next slide and watch the clip that explains this in a little bit more detail. I'd like you to turn to the second page in your work booklets, please. In the middle of this page you should see a box that says summarize the information, and you've got some information on the Crimean War. Now this is the context behind the poem. This is where the charge of the Light Brigade happened. So just read through those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines, 6.5 lines in the middle of your page there on the Crimean War, and it tells you what happened. Now once you've read through that, I'd like you to watch this little clip. If you just click on the actual clip, it should come up and it should start playing for you. If not, I've got the YouTube link there that kind of explains in a lot of detail what happened with the charge of the Light Brigade and how this Light Brigade during the Crimean War made a charge towards the enemy and towards near enough certain death. So have a look at that after you've read through that information, and you can write down 4 points that summarize what happened just above where it says activity 2.
Hi, I'm Griffin Johnson, and this is Armchair History. This video today is in collaboration with my friend Brandon. You can find his channel by searching Brandon F on YouTube. I highly recommend subscribing, or at least checking out his videos that go hand in hand with this one. He'll be covering the broad cultural aspects of the event I'm here to discuss today, the charge of the Light Brigade. It was the second year of the Crimean War, and British forces were strangling the Russian garrison defending Sevastopol. In a desperate attempt to break the siege, the main Russian army launched an attack on the British-occupied port city of Balaclava to break the Allied supply line. In reaction, British and Turkish forces were deployed to face off with the Russians. The attack opened up with the Russian army quickly capturing the first line of defense surrounding the port city, but by the time they made it to the main defensive line held by British and Turkish forces, they fell flat on their face. The British Heavy Brigade, the armored counterpart to the Light Brigade, would end up seeing a lot of action early in that day, action the Light Brigade was restricted from partaking in, as they were on orders to remain static. This added another layer of frustration onto the famed cavalry expert Captain Nolan, a key figure in this battle. Discontent with the lack of exercise from the Light Brigade, he would beg the head command relentlessly to utilize the Light Brigade's brisk potential, but wouldn't have any success, at least initially. The man responsible for the inaction of the Light Brigade was Head Commander Lord Raglan. Aware of the competence of the Light Brigade, he was hesitant to deploy them, as losing his best cavalry may leave his army vulnerable to react to immediate threats. But as the Russian attack grew weak, he finally found opportune conditions to put the Light Brigade to use. The order was sent. The Light Brigade would need to eliminate a group of disorganized Russian soldiers attempting to carry away British artillery on the abandoned outer defenses. Nolan, the cavalryman, would be in charge of delivering the order. Nolan approached Lord Lucan, the head commander of both the Heavy and the Light Brigade, to issue it. The order had quite ambiguously stated that the Light Brigade would go in and attack a band of Russian soldiers head-on, and 5 minutes later the Heavy Brigade would follow up, sweeping up any resistance and prevent the Light Brigade from being counterattacked by Russian forces. Nolan would not actually give Lord Lucan the written order. Instead, he told it verbally, adding on even more ambiguity to the stipulations of the order. In confusion, Lord Lucan asked Nolan to specify where exactly he wanted to send the brigades. As there were no Russians in sight from his position, Nolan gestured broadly with his arm, pointing in the incorrect direction, the direction that the entire Russian army was positioned. And it just so happens that there was a large element of Russian artillery that had been set up with the bulk of the army, allowing for easy misinterpretation of this order. It is here where historians begin to dissent, so listen carefully. There's reason to believe that Nolan may have pointed the wrong direction on purpose in order to exercise the Light Brigade's full potential against a Russian position. Nolan had spent his entire life writing numerous books on the use of cavalry, and frequently advocated for direct attacks with them. It does sound a little peculiar, however, that Nolan would intentionally misdirect the cavalry towards, ostensibly, certain death, but we'll get back to that later. As the order was meant to be executed quickly and without question, the commander of the Light Brigade, Lord Cardigan, would deploy before there was any realization or protest at the blunder. With the order received, the stage is now set and it is time for the Light Brigade to see action. Forward the Light Brigade is called by command, the bugle sound, and 600 horse begin set pace to a trot. Obscure, the horsemen's targets are far in the distance. They approach the entrance of the valley, and what can be distinguished now are large formations of enemy troops lining the hills. The brigade enters this envelopment of guns, but there's no noise yet. In fact, it's quiet, but soon a faint noise can be heard calling from behind. It's Captain Nolan. Zealous, he rides in front of the 600 shouting. At the same time, the Russian guns in the crest now rupture, volcanic with cannon shot. The horses quickly begin a gallop as fire rains down on them. Before Nolan's decry can be decrypted, an exploding shell bursts in front of him, killing him instantly. He is among the first casualties of those charging. Molten smoke pours into the valley from the guns, gunpowder blown at constant rate, the sky is swept into darkness. As the noble 600 close in on the enemy, carnage proliferates as the brigade attenuates. Bone fragments and shrapnel from landed shells do equal the damage of the cannonballs themselves. The horsemen, now closer to the guns than ever, are met with another wave of fire. Volleys from the Russian infantry melt off the outside layers of the Light Brigade. Just when all hope seems lost, however, French cavalry storm behind a battery of Russian guns, silencing them immediately. The Light Brigade finally reaches their target. Now it's their turn. Bloodthirsty, they unleash fury at the bulwark of artillerists and Russian horsemen. It's a slaughter, both sides cutting one another down like animals. The Russians on the brink of retreat will soon be met with relief from their own reinforcements, but if the order Nolan delivered is followed exactly, the Heavy Brigade should come in to assist their comrades. As the fighting continues, the Heavy Brigade cannot be found, however, and to make matters worse, the main Russian cavalry force is now blocking the Light Brigade's escape. Lord Cardigan, commander of the Light Brigade, is nowhere to be seen, and so, alone, abandoned, and surrounded, the Light Brigade must fight its way back to friendly lines. An opening is found, however, where the French cavalry had mounted their assault, and so the remaining Light Brigade retreat quickly through the gap, but take heavy casualties that mile back to Allied lines. The field falls silent. All that can be heard now are just a few guns going off sporadically. In just 20 minutes, hundreds of men have been slaughtered on the field without either side achieving really any practical gains. The charge is over. Russian Lieutenant Kubitovich would go on to say, "The English fought with astounding bravery, and when we approached their dismounted and wounded men, even these refused to surrender, and continued to fight till the ground was soaked with their blood." The soldiers in the Light Brigade had been furious, not at their order, but rather at the Heavy Brigade who failed to arrive. Many speculate that it was because of the feud both commanders had with one another that had been going on for 30 years. If they had arrived, the British cavalry may have single-handedly won the entire engagement. And back on to the point of Captain Nolan, no one really knows what he was yelling when he came out to join the charge, but it remains suspicious that he ran out in front of all of the cavalry as if he was leading the charge instead of approaching the commander to order a retreat. Historians will forever continue the debate on Nolan's intentions, as there's no real evidence to prove either conviction. Thank you for watching. I'd like to thank my patrons on Patreon, Emmanuel, James, Emerson, Adam, Derek, and Alex. And those working on the Armchair History team, Tiberiu Vatumanu, my graphic artist Michael Sezin, and my animator Marcel for making this video possible. If you want to know more about the significance of this conflict, join me next time for my video on the impact of the war. And don't forget to subscribe to Brandon F. and myself. Thank you again, and I'll...
Now, I know on that clip, the YouTube clip of the gentleman talking about the Crimean War, he's talking really quickly, but if you've got the gist of what happened during the Crimean War and what happened with the Light Brigade, then that's all you need to know. You don't need to know the Crimean War in that much detail. Of course, we're not historians, we're analysing a piece of literature, but you do need to know the context. Activity 2 on the next page involves an article that you need to read. So if you go on to the next page, you can see a news article from the Chester Chronicle dated the 18th of November 1854, and the title is Charge of the Light Cavalry Brigade. I'm going to leave you for 10 minutes to have a read through that. Once you've read through the Chester Chronicle Charge of the Light Cavalry Brigade newspaper article, I'd like you to come back to Activity 2 and answer those 3 boxes. So the first one says, in this box, summarise what the newspaper is saying about the Light Brigade. The second one says, in this box, pick a quotation from the report which describes the Light Brigade and complete single word analysis on the language used. And the final one, having read the article and completed the activities, write down everything you have learned about the Light Brigade and the Battle of Balaclava in full sentences. But you didn't know Balaclava was an actual place. You thought it was something you put over your head. Now you know. So on the next slide, I'll get you some answers to help you. But do have a go at it first. So hopefully you've had a read through the article and you've completed the table for Activity 2. If you're really struggling with it, I've got some answers here for you. So the first one that says, summarise what the newspaper is saying about the Light Brigade. Well, basically, the newspaper is saying that the brave soldiers fought on in the face of certain death against superior Russian firepower. The second box, pick a quotation. I've picked a quotation from early on in the article, which is brilliantly and bravely. So this is a use of plosive alliteration. So when you use alliteration with the letter B, as it has done here, that's known as plosive. And what that does is it forces the reader to amplify the achievement of those that fought, because you can't really say brilliantly and bravely in a quiet sense, because that B sound is quite powerful, and that has been used quite directly by the writer of the article, and has been used for emphasis. The third box that says, having read the article and completed the activities, write down everything that you've learned about the Light Brigade and the Battle of Balaclava. Just a couple of bullet points will be fine. What you have learned, what you know about the Light Brigade. Next slide. We'll move on to the actual poem.
Half a league, half a league, half a league onward. all in the valley of death rode the 600. "Forward the Light Brigade! Charge for the guns!" he said. Into the valley of death rode the 600. "Forward the Light Brigade!" Was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldier knew someone had blundered. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them volleyed and thundered. Stormed at with shot and shell, boldly they rode and well. Into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell, rode the 600. Flashed all their sabres bare, flashed as they turned in air, sabring the gunners there, charging an army, while all the world wondered. Plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke. Cossack and Russian reeled from the sabre stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon behind them volleyed and thundered. Stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell. All that was left of them, left of the 600. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made. All the world wondered. Honor the charge they made. Honor the Light Brigade. Noble 600.
So hopefully you were following along as the poem was being read in the clip on the previous slide. And it was read quite quickly. So what I'd like to do over the next 2 slides is read through it with you again at a slower pace, stanza by stanza. So we'll do the first 3 stanzas first, and then we'll just stop and look at some keywords or some words that we might not understand. So, The Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Stanza 1. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the valley of death rode the 600. Forward the Light Brigade, charge for the guns, he said. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Stanza 2. Forward the Light Brigade, was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldier knew someone had blundered. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Stanza 3. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered. Stormed at with shot and shell, boldly they rode and well. Into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell, rode the 600. That's the first 3 stanzas. I just want to stop and break down the poem stanza by stanza. Stanza 1. Half a league. What's a league? I wonder if any of you know. A league is actually an old school unit of measurement that is equivalent to about 3.5 miles according to Google. You'll never have heard anybody talk about leagues. Unless you watch horse racing, they sometimes talk about leagues there, but don't know how many of you are horse racing fans. So yeah, it's an old unit of measurement, a league. So half a league would be 1.25 miles, and that's how they measure how quickly, not how quickly, but how far horses can go. So it makes sense to be used in the cavalry. half a league onward, all in the Valley of Death. Now, the Valley of Death is interesting because it's actually a biblical reference to a very famous quote in the Bible from Psalm 25. It's quite well known. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. It's not an exact quote, but it kind of links to that biblical quote. Forward the Light Brigade, charge for the guns. That's obviously a quote, so that's something that one of the soldiers in the Light Brigade has said. And then we'll go into the Valley of Death for the 600. Stanza 2, there's a couple of words I just want to bring up. The word dismayed. To be dismayed means to be shocked and panicked. And what Tennyson is saying is that nobody in the Light Brigade was shocked or panicked. They were willing to give up their lives. And not though the soldier knew someone had blundered. Blunder means to make a mistake. If you make a blunder, you make a mistake. So someone had blundered, someone had made a mistake. If you remember back to the clip that explained a little bit about the Crimean War and what happened, they actually rode into the wrong position. Further down into the Valley of Death is also repetition and the biblical reference to Psalm 25. I think it's quite, apart from those couple of ideas that we've explored, I think it's quite self-explanatory. Stanzas 1, 2 and 3. So let's move straight on to the next slide and stanzas 4, 5 and 6. So we'll go through the final 3 stanzas of the Charge of the Light Brigade now. So you should be following through. Make sure you've got the poem in front of you. Stanza 4. Flashed all their sabres bare, flashed as they turned in air, sabring the gunners there, charging an army while all the world wondered. Plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke. Cossack and Russian reeled from the sabre stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Stanza 5. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon behind them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell. All that was left of them, left of 600. Stanza 6. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made, all the world wondered. Honour the charge they made, honour the Light Brigade, noble 600. Let's break it down, let's have a look at this. Stanza 4, first line, sabre. Sabre's one of those long swords that you often saw at the hip of soldiers back in the day, that they would kind of pull out, almost like a pirate sword. That was a sabre as well. So it's a long sword with a curved blade. Cossack. Now a Cossack is a very specific group of Russian soldiers. The Cossacks are a different ethnic group. You've got to remember, Russia is a huge country with lots of different ethnicities. So like the United Kingdom, you've got Scottish people, you've got English people, Welsh people. Cossacks are a very specific ethnic group, and they were very loyal to the Russian king, who was known as the Tsar. So they were always known as a kind of like a military people. Continuing through, reeled from the sabre stroke, shattered and sundered. The word sunder means to split. I don't think there's anything else in stanza 5 or 6 that is a word that we might not understand looking at it. So we'll move on to the 2 questions just underneath where you've got the actual poem in your work booklet. You've got 2 questions. The first one that says, what is happening in this poem? Explain your ideas in no more than 4 sentences. And number 2 how does Tennyson present the 600 men of the Light Brigade? So I'd like you to have a go at those two questions, please. And when you're ready, move through the slide to find the answers. You have got the link at the top of activity 3 as well, that Schmoop link. So if you can click on that for a bit more information on the charge of the Light Brigade. Then please answer those two questions. Move on to the next couple of slides where you will find some answers, but only go on to the answers once you've had a go yourself. Here you've got some answers to the questions on activity 3 just below the actual poem. So the first question was, what is happening in this poem? Explain your ideas in no more than 4 sentences. So what I've got here is, I suppose, a little summary. So the Light Brigade, who are a cavalry division of the British Army, charged against Russian positions during the Crimean War and found themselves trapped by gunfire and cannon fire. Tennyson, who's the poet, remember, writes a dedication to the 600 men who fought and most of whom died. So Tennyson is glorifying their deaths. Number 2, how does Tennyson present the 600 men of the Light Brigade? Explain no more than 4 sentences. So the presentation of the 600 in the charge of the Light Brigade is one of fearlessness in the face of certain death. He lionizes, and to lionize someone is to praise somebody by focusing on their bravery. So he lionizes the soldiers and their willingness to go head first into battle without question. So there are your answers to those two questions. You may have got something similar. If you're looking at those answers and thinking, oh, that's a good idea, I could get that down, just add it to your answer. And I'll see you on the next slide to talk you through activity 4. Now, I'd like you to turn to activity 4 in your work booklet, which is entitled Clarifying Tricky Vocabulary. I'd like you to spend no longer than 20 minutes on this activity. It says it right at the top. Some of the words in the poem are quite complex. Write the definitions for each word and explain what they mean in the poem's context. Look at the example below to help you. So that's league, that's already been done for you. Once you've finished adding your definitions, check the answers in the back of the booklet immediately to avoid any errors and misconceptions. So the tricky vocabulary we've got is league, blundered, volleyed, sabres, Cossack and sundered. We have actually gone through quite a few of these words when I read the poem out to you. So I've explained what some of those key words are, so you shouldn't be troubled too much by the definitions. The best way to do this activity, in my opinion, is just to have a go at it. Whatever you think is the right answer, write it down and try and write down what you think the line means, and then compare that to the actual answers that are in the back of the booklet. It doesn't matter if you get it wrong, just have a go. Because remember, you have got the answers there. So the next time you will hear me speak is when I talk you through activity number 5. So best of luck with activity 4. I'll see you soon. Right, so activity number 5, which is highlighting and annotating the poem. And I can't stress enough how important a skill it is to be able to annotate poetry. So ideally you should have the poem in front of you so you could write on the actual poem after line 1 how you're analysing it. If you haven't got the poem in front of you, and I understand that not everybody has access to a printer, just make these notes in your notepad. So you've got 23 mini tasks if you have a look there on activity 5. How I want you to do this is to go through each of those question by question, and then once you've done, for example, question 1, have a look at the PowerPoint it will give you the answers. So you're just working through each question and the answers will be popping up to help you. As I say, if you haven't got the actual poem in front of you, you're just scribbling down the answers as they come up. When I say scribbling down, write them neatly in a way that you can refer to them later for your GCSE. Right, so I'll leave you now to complete those 23 mini tasks. If you're stuck at any point, all you need to do is cycle through the PowerPoint and you will find the answers. Best of luck. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Analysing poetry is a difficult skill to master. But it is so important that you do learn how to analyse poetry for your GCSE. Now this task, Activity 5, is about getting you ready to analyse poems. And hopefully you'll get to a point where you can do this by yourself. You just go through the poem line by line and you pick out the key ideas. So well done for getting halfway through this task. If you need to take a break, probably now is a good time to take one. Of course you're at home, so go and relax for a little while. Come back to the work. As I said last time, I will be here waiting for you when you get back, and we'll continue with Activity 5. Go and have an ice cream or something. It's nice weather outside. Cornetto. See you soon. Welcome back. For those of you that didn't even bother taking a break and you're just working straight through, I salute you. Continue with Activity 5. Activity 6 on the next page is for those students that are aiming for a grade 7 or above. It is challenging, but I think you can have a go at it, so don't be afraid to have a go at it. To get a grade 7 and above, you need to have an extra layer of analysis that shows that you know the context of the poem in detail. If you click on the YouTube link, you'll see a video link that comes up. It's about a 30-minute clip where there's an English teacher talks you through the charge of the Light Brigade, and he talks specifically about the rhyme scheme and the rhythm. I think those are two really important points that do need to be looked at. So please do have a look at that clip and make some notes on your work booklet or in your notepad with regards to Activity 6. At the very least, if you can do a summary, that would be great. So do have a look at that. And I know there's going to be some things in there that are quite difficult, and that's what your class teachers are there for. So do get in touch with your class teachers if you are stuck at any point. So have a look at that YouTube clip, make some notes, and then move on to Activity 7, please. Activity 7, and I want everybody to have a go at this, please, is to analyse and just have a quick look at and then analyse the key themes in the charge of the Light Brigade. So what we're doing here is we're considering the big ideas, the key themes that are explored in Tennyson's charge of the Light Brigade. So you've got a bunch of boxes here. I can count how many have I got here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 boxes. Tick the 3 or 4 that you think apply to the poem, and then briefly explain your choices in paragraph form just underneath those tick boxes. Don't tick more than 4, and then give your answer. Once you've completed that work, hand it in to your class teacher, who will have a look at it, and they will get some feedback to you. Just want to say, Year 9, I want to thank you for those of you that have been with me over these last 2 sessions, looking at Storm on the Island and the charge of the Light Brigade. It has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to do this with you. Hope to see you all soon, safe and well, when eventually the schools open. Very best wishes from me, Mr. Arif. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.